Coming up next on Backchecking the Bolts. How many Stanley Cup bridesmaids dresses does Corey Perry have in his
Like
career?
5 or 6 now? He's the 1 year with the Lightning where he didn't make it, but that's, I think, the only time out of the last 5 years that he hasn't been there, because he did it with Dallas, he did it with Montreal, he did it with his first year in Tampa, and then he did it with Edmonton the last 2 years.
When all is said and done in terms of playoff games played, he's going to be pretty high on top of that list.
Welcome to Backchecking the Bolts. Backchecking the Bolts is your cup of coffee to get you the latest on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Join host Jason Linkus and the managing editor of Raw Charge, Justin Godfrey, as they break down the Lightning's most recent games and go beyond the highlights, telling you what the box scores didn't. It's time to drop the puck.
Welcome to Backchecking the Bolts. This is your Joe Ricci, Alexander Selovanov, and Andre Schuster episode. And if you are a fan of goaltending, it's your Marc-Andre Fleury episode. It's episode number 29 of Backchecking the Bolts. Hi, I'm your host, Jason Linkus. And as always, I'm joined by the managing editor of Raw Charge. He is Justin Godfrey. You can read him each and every day at www.rawcharge.com. Justin, 4-3 overtime win yesterday. Wasn't the most exciting game in the world, but what were your initial thoughts?
Would have been nice to win in regulation, hold out that hope for the Atlantic Division title, but they got the 2 points. They're in the playoffs. They know who they're going to be facing now. They got through it, I believe, without injury, so that's always a nice thing. You're playing a team that's out of the playoffs, probably not at their top. The Lightning did struggle a bit, but they got the 2 points. We're moving on. One more game in the regular season, and then, the real fun begins.
For those people who don't know, it was the fact that the Lightning won in overtime and not in regulation that eliminated them from the Atlantic Division title, correct?
Correct. That and the fact that the Chicago Blackhawks just decided to forget how to play hockey against the Sabres last night. It's funny, I turned it on. It was 2-1, I think, when I turned it on. Chicago gets a 5-on-3 power play, and I don't even know if they got a shot on goal. And then it seemed like every time Buffalo went down the ice, they scored again. So that kind of deflated the victory a little bit for the Lightning. But again, they weren't really, concerned about winning the title. I think it would have been nice. It's always nice to hang a banner. They're in the playoffs. They're getting their game to where it needs to be. And like I said, just wanted to get through last night's game and then tomorrow's game without injury. Hopefully they can do that, get some of their regulars going back. One of the nice things about it is, he gave up 3 goals, but I thought Andrei Vasilevskiy played fantastic last night. He
did.
There was a lot of play in the Lightning zone, especially in the third period. First period and third period felt like it was almost all in the Lightning zone. He made a lot of key stops, probably kept that from getting out of hand. So to see him kind of getting into that form where he could steal games is really nice. Got some depth scoring as well. There's some good things to draw out of what was a, kind of blah-ish game. So.
I have to ask you, the Lightning are up 3-2 late in the game, and you expected Lightning just to put the defensive clamps down on the Red Wings. And then Detroit gets a 2-on-none with the worst possible people in the world, Patrick Kane and DeBrincat. What happened?
So that's kind of one of those things where Braden Colbert pointed it out in the postgame. Emil Lilleberg's playing on his offhand. So he's a left-handed defenseman playing on the right side. So his back is to the boards, and he never saw Patrick Kane coming. And that's kind of one of those disadvantages. He probably thought he had a little bit more time than he did. I don't think anybody let him know on the ice that Patrick Kane is doing what Patrick Kane has done for, 50 years, however long he's been in the league. He sneaks up on him, steals the puck, starts that 2-on-1. So it's kind of one of those things that the drawback of playing on your offhand is sometimes you're just not in position to see a play coming. And that's what it was. Lilleberg kind of got handcuffed by the pass from McDonough. It's in his skates. He's trying to dig it out, and Kane just comes out of nowhere. And then, like you said, it's Kane and DeBrincat. And Vasi almost made the save. Yeah, I mean,
it was a good effort by Vasi, but I do have to say, if you're going to pick 2 guys on Detroit coming on a 2-on-1, those are not the 2.
Those are not the guys you want to see coming down your throat. I almost wonder if the Lightning just kind of have forgotten how to play with the lead a little bit. It's been a long time. They won in Boston, but it was a late goal that won it. They hadn't played with the lead a lot in the third period. They've been pretty good this year at, shutting teams down. Kind of got away from it a little bit. The Lightning just can't win to make everybody happy this year. None of their wins, they've won 50 games this year, and everyone's complained about pretty much 47 of them, I feel like. So it's just been kind of one of those years where everything's been a struggle. But hey, 50 wins is 50 wins. That's something to be proud about, man.
Only the 5th time in franchise history that they've won 50.
They're a good team. They're going to be one of the top teams in the East. Go out against the Rangers. I think there is still a little bit to play for. You're still playing for home ice advantage against Montreal. So it'll be interesting to see how they do. If I'm not mistaken, Montreal plays tonight. Am I right about that?
Montreal plays at Philadelphia tonight.
Okay.
And neither team will have much to play for. Montreal trying to get into the second position in the Atlantic, but Philadelphia clinched. They are going to be playing the Pittsburgh Penguins. So that's where they're at. So Philadelphia doesn't have to worry about playing anybody tonight if they don't want to.
Do they have a chance to catch the Penguins or?
No.
Okay.
No, the Penguins own all the tiebreakers.
Okay.
So that was one of the reasons why you saw the Penguins rest Crosby and Malkin on Saturday. They're locked into that 2 seed. So for them, especially as old as their roster is, it was a chance for them to rest up some players.
Yeah, maybe one of the few teams older than the Lightning, it seems like. But that being said,
that's probably a certainty.
It's going to be interesting to see how it goes. If say Montreal loses tonight, you could probably see a B level roster from the Lightning against the Rangers. If they win, does Cooper try to go for it? Hagel's status is kind of in the air right now. I know when they did the ESPN game against Boston, the ESPN crew had kind of said that, yeah, Hagel's going to play against Boston, but he may not play the last 2 games. They just kind of wanted to see where he was in terms of his fitness. He didn't play against Detroit. Does he play against New York? A lot could depend on what happens tonight with Montreal. If they do lose, then the Lightning are going to clinch that second spot. So we'll see how it goes.
I'm just going to play devil's advocate there. With Hagel, you played him against Boston, but then you sat him out against Detroit. Why even risk it now? You had a good season. Whatever you're dinged up with, we want you to wait till game 1.
I think they wanted to see how he recovered from a day's action. Maybe it's, can he play 2 nights in a row? Can he, how bad does he feel the day after playing in a game? If Hagel's on the ice, he's going to go 100%. You saw it in the Boston game. He took 2 or 3 pretty awkward falls actually in that game, got back up and kept playing. So I think it's kind of more of a recovery thing. Hey, so you played 20 minutes against Boston. How do you feel the day after? For all intents and purposes, Cooper was kind of vague about if he's going to play. He said he was going to miss the game against Detroit, but hopefully that would be the last game he missed for the season. So we'll see if he plays against New York. And again, Vasilevsky will probably go, especially if Johansson's still hurt.
Justin, we talked a little bit about the Hagel injury, but get us up to date on where the Lightning are health-wise. It's been a storyline throughout the season, and really for the last month. The Lightning have been extremely banged up. It's a time for them to play some of the guys from Syracuse, get some of the guys you've been scratching some minutes heading into the playoffs. Get us up to date on the Lightning injury situation.
So it sounds like the one really long-term injury is going to be Pontus Holmberg. Again, referencing back to that game against Boston. ESPN had pretty much said that it looks like Holmberg's out through the first round is what they're hearing, possibly more. So whatever that shoulder injury that he's dealing with, upper body injury, is going to keep him out for a while. Status on Victor Hedman is unknown. I think Emily Kaplan put it as maybe even Hedman doesn't know when he's coming back. So that remains a mystery. Other than that, it sounds like pretty much your other players that have been banged up should be ready to go for the playoffs. Dominic James, Max Crozier have both been skating, participating in practices, not expected to be back for the regular season. That being said, maybe the New York game is something where we see James and Crozier come back and just to see how they're doing. Zemgus Girgensons did come back. He had missed the Boston game, I believe, but was back out there against Detroit. And so Hagel looks like he's going to be good to go for the playoffs. So, Brayden Point's probably still dealing with something. I thought he looked a little bit better against Detroit. You saw some of those moves where he was cutting towards the net. He was starting to skate a little bit better. So it looks like he's good to go. Cirelli's played the last few games, so he should be good to go. Declan Carlisle has been back in. So it looks like pretty much all the banged up guys. Darren Radish has missed the last couple of games. No real word on what his injury is, but you kind of have that feeling maybe it's one of those, hey, if this was a playoff game, he'd be playing kind of things that he's dealing with. So it'll be interesting to see if he comes back for the New York game, or if they keep him out for the playoffs.
Justin, I want to talk about the absence of Radish, and you saw it yesterday in the Detroit game on the power play, the Bolts looked a little bit lost on the power play. They're so used to having that big one-timer from the point. You saw Mosier, who's a left-handed shot, and there's nothing he can do when you're taking the passes from Kucherov, but you can see there's a little awkwardness there. It gives the other team a chance to regroup and get in front of Mosier before he decides on what to do. Tell me about that loss of Radish and what it truly means right now to this Bolts team.
Yeah, you pretty much take away the two strongest parts of their power play. It's the Radish one-timer from the point, and then him being able to feed it back to Kucherov fairly easily. The left side of the power play has been probably their weakest side. They've kind of cycled through some stuff. They were hoping Bjorkstrand with the one-timer could be, the Timu version of Stamkos over there. Hasn't quite worked out. Brandon Hagel's been over there. They bumped Point out there a few times. I think Corey Perry's had a chance out there. It just hasn't worked out. Everything kind of cycles through Radish and Kucherov. Either Radish taking the big blast or him moving the puck right back to Kucherov to set up a pass to Point in the slot. It's struggling. The power play is struggling. It's one for its whatever. I don't know if they're in the 30s now or something like that.
It's close.
Yeah. Part of me wonders that maybe Cooper doesn't want to show too much right now. Against Montreal, they had kind of some interesting lineups. Corey Perry was out there. I think Edward Destu was out there a little bit. How much film do you want to give your opponent this time of year? So maybe you just try some other things. Don't really worry about scoring on the power play. Kucherov is going to be Kucherov in the playoffs. Point's going to be back in that bumper spot. So at this point, I don't know how serious they're taking the power play in the games. You don't want to take a game off or anything like that, but sometimes, hey, discretion is a better part of valor, and you just kind of don't give teams tape on what they want to see. So we'll see if Radish is back for the playoffs. They should be back to that unit that has been fairly successful, if somewhat streaky throughout the season.
Justin, one of the players that you had mentioned earlier was Victor Hedman. Now, Hedman's been out for quite some time. If he comes back, does he just come right back into the lineup? Is he going to practice for a while? What is your thought on Hedman and his availability to the Lightning?
That's a really good question. Information is a complete lockdown on whatever the situation is. Again, it's not an injury designation that he has. He's away for personal reasons. As far as I know, he hasn't been in any of the practices, hasn't been skating or anything like that. So there could be some ramp up time. He is a veteran. He's not going to let himself get out of shape if it's, not anything physical that he's dealing with. As long as he's been getting on the ice at some point, it could be a quick ramp up period. I think if he comes back and plays, you're looking at kind of what they did when he came back from his elbow surgery, which is third line minutes, probably second power play unit. It's kind of hard to break up some of the pairings that you have right now between Radish and Moser, and then Chernak and McDonough. So you don't want to break up those two top pairs right now. He's played pretty well with Destu. In the few minutes they played together. So I would think that would be your third pairing, but we'll see how they deal with it. Eventually it's going to come out what he's dealing with, and let's see how it goes from there.
Let's go back to recent history. How has John Cooper handled situations where someone has been out long term and all of a sudden is available for the playoffs? Now, we're making a hypothetical that Victor Hedman will be available for the playoffs. He might not be around until next season. But that being said, when Cooper's been in these situations, is he willing to throw someone right back in the lineup? Does he wait for an injury? Does he make them earn their way back?
Depends on the player. Most of the time, if it's one of his top line guys, like Braden Point was out for quite a while this year, they get thrown right back in. And I think it's very situational. It's what they're dealing with. If it's an injury that's kept him off of the ice, he has been known to ease him back in, let him skate for a while. I think you've seen that kind of with Dominic James right now and Max Crozier. They're probably good to go. I mean, they could probably play in a game right now, but they are getting that ice time. They are ramping things back up. We all know just the difference in speed between the regular season and the playoffs. So it's kind of hard to throw somebody, say a Dominic James who's been out for 2 months or whatever. Hey, congratulations, rookie. You get thrown in against one of the fastest teams in the NHL and the Canadiens. Have fun dealing with that. We'll see how he goes. In his past, he's taken it situation by situation. He does listen to the medical staff a lot, the assistant coaches, and kind of goes with what the best track for the player is. Unfortunately, you're not going to have like a conditioning stint available for somebody. coming out. They're
Right.
not going to be able to get time in the AHL to play a couple games. So it's going to be practice and then into a game at some point. So we'll see how they manage it.
Now we know the playoff opponent, it's the Montreal Canadiens. It's been a tight season series. They've played 2 games within the last month. Both of those went to the Montreal Canadiens, a 4-1 win in Tampa, and then in early April, a 2-1 win for Montreal up at the Bell Center. Justin, we know there's a lot of speed that they're going to have to deal with. What do you think is the secret ingredient for both teams to win this series?
For Montreal, it's going to be, can you get the type of goaltending you've been getting down the stretch? Is Dobish going to be your number one? Is he going to make these key saves that he's made down the stretch? Can you get some production out of your third and fourth lines? I think that's what you're looking for from Montreal. I have a good feeling the top 2 lines are going to be a handful for anyone to deal with, especially that Nick Suzuki top line. They're just too good not to score. So
Justin, real quick, I want to talk about Nick Suzuki real quick. People forget how he got to Montreal. He was a part of the Max Pacioretty deal. When Max Pacioretty went to Vegas, it was Tomas Tatar, Nick Suzuki, and I want to say a first-round pick, or it was at least a draft pick that went to Montreal for Max Pacioretty. That deal for Montreal, they hit a home run.
Yeah. Sometimes you need your cornerstone big deals to help with a rebuild, which is what the Canadiens were kind of doing in the post Carey Price era. It's not always that first round pick that is the sexiest thing. A lot of times it's either the second or third part of the deal that gets thrown in that becomes the biggest asset. Credit to Suzuki. I think he's learned a lot playing for St. Louis. I think he's learned a lot playing just in Montreal in general. It's good to see him succeed. Probably one of the quietest 100-point seasons you've ever heard.
Well, talking about 100-point seasons, that is a Canadian player's first 100-point season since 1986. That is hard to believe with the history, and this team has not been void of talent. They haven't had the top line player, but it's just hard to believe that it's been that long. It was Mats Naslund, and in 86, that was the year they won the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and you wonder, probably should get some hard attention. I mean, and without Suzuki, where are the Canadiens at? So he'll probably get some back ballot votes and stuff like that. You'll see some 4th and 5th place votes for him, but for the Hart Trophy. But yeah, he's been a big key. Him and Caulfield have formed that chemistry. And when you have it with younger players, if you're a Habs fan, you're like, man, these guys can be together for quite a while doing this.
We have some really good building blocks.
Yeah, it's kind of like that, Richards-Lecavalier pairing early in when you have those 2 guys, when you're like, all right, we're going to be good for a little bit. So it's fun to watch.
Yeah, Justin, I know I got you off track a little bit when I sort of jumped in there, but you were talking about the Canadian secret ingredient in this series. You mentioned it's their goaltending. What about the Lightning?
I think the Lightning, you just got to be able to get the puck out of your zone. You got to be able to deal with the forecheck that Montreal is going to have. You're going to have to deal with their speed. The last 2 games, I thought the Lightning have actually done pretty well against them. They were both Canadian wins, but they were fairly close games, with the Lightning not playing like 100% of their games. So they were still able to keep Montreal within their sights, even when they weren't playing their best. So if you can get the puck out, if you can get through that neutral zone with a little bit of speed, and then push back on their defenders, I do still think that the Montreal defense has some holes in it. I think you can take advantage of some of if you put pressure on them, if you drive them back with speed through the zone, I think you can create some chances. So that's what I'm going to look for from the Lightning, just to have a little bit more flow to their game. It's something we haven't really seen probably since the Pittsburgh game, honestly. That flow through the neutral zone where they're getting the puck out quickly, getting through the neutral zone with speed, and then attacking the opposing net. So if we could see that, a big line, it's going to be the top line, whoever Kucherov is playing with, if it's Point or if it's, that Cirelli-Hagel line. Want to see them just pushing forward. It's the north to south game everybody talks about. When you're going from your zone to the offensive zone, you want to be moving in straight lines, straight down the ice. So if they can do that, I think they have a good chance. So I think they match up better than people think against the Canadiens. I saw a quick line. I think the Bolts were minus 280 in the series or something like that, which I thought was a little aggressive. I think it's more of a coin flip. So it'll be interesting to see how once home ice is determined, if that line moves at all.
When I was at the Westgate, I saw the current betting lines for the Eastern Conference. I think Tampa might be plus 230, Carolina was plus 210, but it's basically the same.
Yeah.
So those two are the major front runners to win the East. But Justin, these two teams have a playoff history. They've met 4 times in the playoffs. In 2004, the Bolts were on their way to their first Stanley Cup. It was a clean sweep, a pretty easy series for Tampa.
Yeah, I do remember that series. It's funny, back in those days, myself and a friend had actually mapped out the series to try and see a game in Montreal. And we were shooting for like game 5 or game 6. And didn't quite happen, but still had a really fun weekend in Montreal. We booked our tickets and flew up there, and then the Lightning went and swept. So I think we were shooting for game 5, if I remember the series correctly. But yeah, no, that was a fun series. That was kind of the series. The Lightning were up 2-0, and then in game 3, Vinny scored late, really late, to tie it up, I believe. And then they win the game. And it's kind of the moment where you thought, hey, this Lightning team may be a little bit special. It's kind of it was their second year in the playoffs in a row. They had lost to Jersey the first year. They won the first round pretty easily. Hobby Bullen was just an absolute stud throughout those first couple rounds. And, they win, they sweep, and you're like, uh-oh, this Lightning team may have a little something. There's a little something special there. So that's kind of what I remember from that series. Vinny, I think, had 5 goals in his first playoff series in Montreal, against his hometown team. So that was pretty special for him.
I remember going into those playoffs, there was actually some questions about Hobby Pullen, because if you went back to 2003 when they lost to the Devils, it wasn't Hobby Pullen in net in the deciding game. It was John Graham.
Yeah.
So there was a question mark on whether Hobby Pullen was the true go-to guy, because everyone was surprised that Tortorella went to Graham in New Jersey in game 5. Remember, I think it was a triple overtime game that they lost.
Yeah. Torts being torts, so finding ways to motivate people through
trying to push
it. It worked. It worked, because Hobby Bullen was absolutely fantastic, especially those first 2 rounds. So it lit a fire under the guy. And it was a great year. So,
and Justin, in 2014, these two teams met, and it was the Carey Price show. He was the story. Montreal swept Tampa in 4, a pretty surprising result. Tampa came in as the favorite in that series, and Montreal took it to them.
Yeah, and that was kind of a weird one, because a few games to go in the regular season, Ben Bishop had actually gotten hurt. I think it was against Toronto. So he wasn't available for that series. It was the Anders Lindback show. Coop got some flack at that time in regards to how he had managed Ben Bishop down the stretch. But it was also, I also remember, it was like the Canadiens' 3rd or 4th line. It was like the Dale Weiss line. Just absolutely had a great series, and then you put Price on top of it. And the Lightning were the favorites, but it felt like they, after game 1 or game 2, it felt like they just didn't have a chance, honestly. So yeah, they kind of first 2 meetings were sweeps for one side or the other. So,
and then in 2015 they met again. This time it was the Lightning victorious 4-2, and just like the season before, when the Lightning had goaltending injuries, Carey Price played game 1 and wasn't to be seen the rest of the series.
And then I think the memorable moment from this one, Tyler Johnson scoring with a second to go in I think it was game 3. To win the game. You kind of had that feeling that this is the second round of the playoffs. Kind of start getting that feeling that maybe this is a little magical run. The Lightning weren't supposed to be there this year. This was their kind of surprising run to the Stanley Cup final. But the triplets line was really good in that series. So again, it was some good memories on that series as well.
And the final series was in 2021 when, believe it or not, folks, if you're a historian of hockey, you probably won't see this again. The Lightning and the Canadiens in the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yes.
This was the COVID year. Conferences didn't matter. Divisions didn't matter. The Lightning ended up playing the upstart Canadiens, and they beat them 4-1 to win the Stanley Cup.
Yep, the Ross Colton goal. And the funny thing is, I was watching that goal this morning. The way they scored on that is the way the Lightning kind of have to play against the Canadiens this year. It started with a board battle along the walls. I think it was Stamkos was in there digging the puck out. They win the puck battle. They move the puck around. David Savard drops down low, has a kind of a clean look at the net, opts to kind of pass it. Ross Colton's right in front, taps it past Carey Price for the only goal of the game. But it's kind of that, rugged mentality where it's not going to be a lot of pretty goals. You're going to have to win those puck battles along the boards. interesting enough, Corey Perry was on the ice for the Canadiens on that goal, and one of his many Stanley Cup losses. So it was kind of fun to see some of those, old highlights. Go back to watch some of these series.
How many Stanley Cup bridesmaids dresses does Corey Perry have in his career?
5 or 6 now.
I think so.
He's the one year with the Lightning where he didn't make it, but that's, I think, the only time out of the last 5 years that he hasn't been there, because he did it with Dallas, he did it with Montreal, he did it with his first year in Tampa, and then he did it with Edmonton the last 2 years, right?
When all is said and done, in terms of playoff games played, he's going to be pretty high on top of that list.
Probably going to be up there playoff game losses too, which, it's kind of one of those dubious status, but you got to realize you got to play a lot of rounds to rack up those playoff losses as well, So, I mean, he's like the perfect playoff player. He's going to be just in front of the net doing things, that you're like, this man's how old? And he's still winning puck battles in front of the net. He's still annoying defenders. He's still getting goaltenders off their game. So it'll be interesting to see how he does, with the Lightning. He had that really good run last year for the Oilers. If he can duplicate that, it'll be a good year for the Bolts.
Justin, I'm going to have you play general manager right now. Corey Perry comes to you after the season, wants to sign a very team-friendly 1-year contract. You're JBB. You sign him?
Probably. I mean, I don't know if you're going to get another fourth-line player that's going to do what Corey Perry does. And, it's one of those things that if he does sign a team-friendly deal, say it's a $1 million deal or something like that, then if he doesn't work out, you can always cut him. There's no loyalty in the NHL, and JBB. It's kind of funny if you're a reader of the Athletic, they pulled the agents and just to talk about which front offices are easy to deal with, and the Lightning, I think we're number 1 or number 2. And basically the agent said it's not that they're pushovers, it's just that they let you know exactly what they're going to do, and they're almost ruthless about the way they go about their business. I wouldn't be surprised to see them if they re-signed him. And again, he struggles, that they let him go. Yzerman cut Andrechuk in the middle of the year. That's the guy who's got a statue in front of the stadium. So that's who Breezeball learned from. So we'll see how it goes.
Justin, you have the game coming up tomorrow night against the New York Rangers. Tell us everything that's going on at Raw Charge.
Yeah, so now that we know who the opponent is, definitely going to start digging into some of the key matchups between the Lightning and the Habs, kind of do a position-by-position breakdown, hopefully to start post those pretty soon. And then, we'll go over the Rangers game, kind of touch base with the rest of the playoff series, do a brief preview on everything else that's going around the league. A lot of new teams in there this year, so a lot of franchise bases that haven't been able to celebrate a playoff run in quite a while.
Well, we are going to be back on Friday. We're going to drop a podcast. It's going to be our playoff preview. We're going to examine all the playoff matchups throughout the league, but of course, we're going to dig real deep into that Bolts Canadiens matchup. Again, you can read Justin at www.rawcharge.com. I'm Jason Linkus. Thanks for joining us today. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and go Bolts.
Go Bolts.
Thank you for listening to Backchecking the Bolts. We are free and available on all platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, YouTube, and Deezer. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review. You can follow Justin on Blue Sky at rawcharge.com. You can follow the show on X at Tampa_Bolts_pod, and on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Backchecking the Bolts. If you're interested in advertising on the show or partnering with us, you can find more information in the show notes or email Jason at backcheckingthebolts@yahoo.com.